Have you ever wondered what makes creative people tick? Where do their ideas come from? What keeps them energized? What kinds of things get in their way? Is their life as much fun as it looks from the outside? Hello, I'm your host, Lily Pierpont, and this is ArtStorming, a podcast about how ideas become paintings or poems, performances, or collections. Each episode, I'll chat with a guest from the arts community, and we'll explore how the most creative among us stare down a blank canvas or reach into the void and create something new. Today I'll be ArtStorming with Timothy Nero, who goes by simply Nero. Nero has a fantastic, spacious, contemporary studio about 20 miles southeast of downtown Santa Fe. I've been there a number of times, but between the pandemic, a couple of surgeries, and a string of family issues which took Nero back east to his hometown in Ohio, it had been some time since we'd had a visit. Now, Nero's work is all about the machinations of mind. And given what we've all lived through, and specifically because of his recent travails, I knew he probably had a lot of new material to explore with his work. So I headed out through the Glorieta Pass, the site of an 1862 Civil War confrontation, to see what beauty he's made from all that turmoil. Okay, so I'm finally reunited with my pal Nero, and it's been too long. And we actually spent a little bit of time before we went live here catching up, because otherwise this would have been a 4-hour podcast.
That's true.
So, since we have covered a lot of the personal stuff, we were doing a little walk around the studio, and I interrupted us so many times because there were conversations that I wanted to have, on the mic. So I don't even know where I think I'll just start in an arbitrary spot and we'll see where we go from there. But what I seem to be leading with in these conversations with artists is tell me something about yourself that I couldn't know from reading your CV or your bio or your website.
Oh my God. Well, I don't divulge everything on the bio or CV anyways. I am on the spot. I don't know.
Well, maybe say something about Glorieta.
Glorieta.
So I think of you as a Santa Fe artist, but technically you're in Glorieta.
But I mean Santa Fe County.
Santa Fe County. Okay, yeah. Good to know. But Glorieta has its own kind of vibe. It's got its own kind of history.
Big history there, yeah.
And so I'm curious, are you in Glorieta in your mind, or are you in Santa Fe in your mind?
No, I reside and work in Glorieta. I like the history. I'm keen on history anyways. And, we're sitting on a Civil War battlefield right here, right now. And so that, I didn't know that when I purchased the property. I purchased the property because it looked more like back east, and green and lush, which is pluses and minuses with that. But, so I figure I'm a Santa Fe artist, but, I'm close enough within 20-minute drive.
Right.
So,
well, one of the reasons that I'm asking that is because my first group of people that I'll be talking to are all Santa Fe artists.
Okay.
People that are in my community from the last 7 years of living here in Santa Fe. And I find that, everybody has a story about how they got to Santa Fe. Very few people, if any, of the people that I'll be chatting with are actually from Santa Fe. So everybody's come from somewhere else.
Right.
And I'm curious about the allure of Santa Fe. What brought you here?
Well, I was living in Taos for 13 years before I came to Santa Fe. And, I mean, I, of course, visited, knew many people, and had exhibitions down here. But, I just, after 13 years, I felt like I was done with Taos, and Santa Fe seemed like a stronger art scene to me. So I sold my home and bought a condo in town. And basically, I lived in town about 5 years. Sold the condo and bought this property, and then began building. I wanted a lot of workspace, and it was more affordable here in Glorieta than it was in Santa Fe.
So you built the space that we're in now?
Yeah, I designed it and built it.
It's a really great space.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with it.
And now you've turned it into a live workspace.
Yes.
So.
And so, so my whole world is just in this little, well, in this big building, actually.
It's a pretty big building,
and
yeah.
thinking of adding on. If I stick around here in this building, I might move back into Santa Fe. One never knows. That's mostly because of the fire potential out here. Because the lush green also gets very dry and burns. So that is always in the back of my mind for many, many years.
So when we were speaking off mic, you were saying that because of the fire concerns, you had put a bunch of your artwork in storage.
All of my artwork. I took it and put it into a storage unit in town on the fly. It was in April of 2022, and the fires were burning 6 miles away. The only advantage I had was that we were west of the fires and the prevailing winds are blowing east. But that doesn't mean that somebody could toss a cigarette out the window and
all goes up in smoke.
Yeah, and I wasn't willing to see my entire history of my life's work go up in smoke. So I took it all in, and then after a while, when the winter brought it back out, because I was actually very disoriented without my work around. I had all my sketchbooks, like I have 80 sketchbooks from over the years, and I didn't have any reference point. So it was just kind of like a wobbling dervish,
Yeah.
And just didn't feel centered at all. I had to get my work back so I could get more balance.
So it makes me think of an interesting question. When you create the paintings that are around us, and we'll get into describing those in just a minute, but do you refer to your notebooks? Is that sort of how you keep track of the ideas that you want to go from a thought to a larger piece? Periodically, but just, I just keep moving forward. So I'm always drawing. Like I mentioned earlier, I did 30 drawings last night, and I'll look at them later today or tomorrow and see which ones need to be more developed or, tossed. But it just keeps me processing. And so, but the sketchbooks are there as more like a security blanket. Knowing I can go look, and I have done, I've got little tabs where I this image is appealing to me at the moment. It's just more like a reassurance that it's all there. It's a odd emotional thing more than anything else, I wouldn't say it's odd.
Well, all right. So.
I mean, we all have the things that are touchstones. I mean, I know that if my computer got lost, I'd be pretty freaked out. I mean, I could probably recreate whatever I did in the last couple of months, but it's the things that I have from years ago that you never know what you want to reference.
Right.
And I think especially for your work, because you're always in process, but now is a good time to describe to the extent that it's possible your work, which is, on the one hand, very consistent in that there are reoccurring shapes and ideas, I would say.
True.
And they all do resemble something that is working through an idea or a thought.
Right.
One of the things that I wanted to say about our relationship, and I can't remember exactly how we met, but one of the things we discovered early on in our relationship is that one of the things we had in common was a meditation practice through a teacher, Ramana Maharshi.
Advaita Advadansa.
And when I first saw your work, it really connected for me because Ramana Maharshi, among other things, addresses teachings in silence. And so you're really forced to reckon with what's in your mind when you're observing your mind doing its monkey mind thing. And when I saw your work, I mean, and I hope you don't take offense to this, but it sort of reminded me of what my mind looks like when I'm observing it in meditation.
Perfect. You nailed it. Yay.
And when you walk around your studio, there's no shortage of mind. So obviously your mind has been at it for a long time, and you have had the wherewithal to capture like snapshots of your mind in action, which is how I experience your work.
Oh,
These
like
sort
that.
of threads of ideas and concepts that are just whirling around. You mentioned dervishes earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not wobbling, they're whirling, and they're whirling in a very spiraling effect. I see, sometimes you see these sparks of ideas. They kind of look like universes of thought, and sometimes just scrambles of thought.
True. All that.
Yeah.
all that. And the thing is, I don't close the book on any of the forms I've been doing, so I will return to the images, like you downstairs earlier, you were seeing those heads and figures. Those are from, those are new paintings, but that's stuff I've been working on for 20 and 30 years.
Well, I recognize those head shapes, if you call them. They're reminiscent of the sculptures that you also do.
Precisely. Yep.
So, seeing that continuity. I mean, for me, I can walk in here and it's like, it might be a lot of new material, but it's kind of like it's still you.
Yeah, you can see the hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's your hand, it's also your mind.
Well,
and I think you're very brave to put your mind on loudspeaker, so to speak.
Well, my work is all self-referential and, it's self-portrait in a way, psychological self-portrait, psychological landscape. And I feel like most artists are revealing themselves through the work. I don't know, maybe people are painting the mesas and stuff. Maybe not so much. I don't know. It's also how they relate. So maybe that is kind of a more recognizable forms, but it's still a self-portrait. Mm-hmm. Possibly. I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to any landscape painters in a while. So.
Well, do you start with a meditation before you enter your studio during the day? What's your process?
When I get up in the morning, I do a meditation of a form, of sort. And then I make coffee and just kind of start my day. And then I wander into the studio, or lately not so much in the studio because I'm trying to assimilate a lot of stuff I brought back from Ohio. But I mean, I don't necessarily clear my mind. I just go in and start playing. Playing is the key. And then that starts informing something, and it starts beginning to build and blossom, I guess, unfold. And it just evolves. And then I don't stay with any one piece. I just move around from piece to piece to piece, and keep circling, again, like a dervish, perhaps. And then suddenly I just realize, oh, that one's done. That's finished. There's nothing more I can do on the painting, the drawing, the sculpture. It's all the same to me.
So do you feel like you're having a conversation with these pieces and they sort of tell you when they're done, or is it something different?
Not a conversation so much. Well, that's maybe so. I don't know. There's just that gut feeling, that gut sense that there's a clunk in the solar plexus that says, oh, this is it. I like this piece. It feels right. It reads visually right. There's nothing that's pulling on me. So that's how I determine when something is finished. Mm-hmm.
And then when it's actually finished, because, I mean, you've got plenty of space, but does it stay there for a minute, or do you physically move it to another part of the studio to declare finished?
Well, I like to move it out of the studio, put it to the sides, put it on shelves or in drawers, to make room for more work. But then it also gives me a time to forget about it and step back from it. And then when I see it again, then I can go, oh, well, this I don't like this now. 2 weeks ago or a month ago or a year ago, it was, fine, but now it's not working. So then I might go back in, or do go back in, or destroy it sometimes if it's really far from where I would like it to be. And I have no qualms or, fear of completely taking out a painting and starting over. It's fine.
Well, I would imagine...
I don't get attached.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can see... You don't get attached, and yet you have, thousands and thousands of pieces. So you've decided that enough of them are okay.
Yes.
And they're wherever in safe places, or they're moved away from the fire's threat and all of that.
Right,
so not attached to that particular thing. But it's also interesting because since they are all kind of thoughts, and then you evolve every day. Exactly. So I can't even imagine how you could decide. I mean, I don't know if I could revisit a thought that I had yesterday and say that it was complete, even knowing that was yesterday's thought, because I'm looking through it through the lens of today. So how are there certain things that you look back on and think, yeah, that was a complete thought then, I still see it as complete? Obviously you must, because you've got...
there's no complete thoughts really. I mean, so it's as far as it can possibly go in a visual language that works. And then that thought is like this I was going to say thread, but more like a huge cable moving and going through. I mean, I've gathered work from grad school days, a month or so ago, and wildly different, and still there's that cable of consideration, that thinking that's there. Or I noticed that my work has an extreme nature to it. Notice. I've been aware of that for a long time, but I see it from 40 years ago in the paintings then, the extreme nature all the way through to present day. There's and it's not always the same. It's pushing forms, pushing ideas. I've never been satisfied with just there's I don't know, complacency. I want my work to have an impact. Love it, hate it, have a feeling at least, not like pass it by like wallpaper.
Right.
So that was the first key consideration way back. I don't think about it now; it's just ingrained in me. So that first thought was, it's got to be arresting in some way, powerful, and that's probably what determines if I'm not satisfied with something. Even if it's a very calming, peaceful painting, or sculpture's not so much, but it has to have its own clear nature. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. So and so then it may be a soft, but it doesn't like freak you out like some of the older work that I did like 20, 30 years ago. Very aggressive, very almost violent, very sexual. All that stuff was there. I was doing a lot of physical forms. What am I trying to say? Figurative work. That's haven't talked to anybody in a long time. Getting my language back.
Well, when you were just back east and you shared with me off mic that you've had a lot of family stuff go on, and then
Right.
in that trip you brought back some of your old pieces.
Right.
When you reconnected with those old pieces, did you feel that visceral, violent nature that you're just describing?
No, I didn't feel it. I mean, I recognized it, and I went, "Oh yeah, there it is." I could see like the paintings of the '80s. That was the Reagan era. And, it was like, then was like fear of nuclear war. Could be right there now. I don't know. But, and, all that saber rattling, and that really impacted my work at that time. And,
So you can look at it and have the distance of your now self looking back at your then self and remember what was going through your mind at that time without being necessarily traumatized or whatever.
Well, yeah, and that's also the benefit of the meditation. I can look at it dispassionately and say, oh, that was then, and this is what was going on then in many of the pieces, and here we are now.
So is it like a journal almost, like a diary of your life and different stages that you've been through?
Yeah, I mean, back then I was in Florida. The colors were highly saturated, very intense, very into medieval painting, medieval art. I was hanging wallpaper. It was just kind of a mad, unwieldy time, and that definitely showed up in those paintings. And, I mean, a mad, unwieldy time in my own personal experience. And then, of course, then there's the greater world, which was doing its thing anyway, so it was my response to both myself and, that being the world. Some of the sketchbooks that I was referring to have a lot of very visceral, figurative forms in them. And we were talking off mic about, it was unknown to me at that time, processing the molestation and rape by the priest. I didn't know until I've lost track, like 2001 or 2, that I was repressed being raped by the priest for a number of years. It wasn't just a one-off. That was so deeply repressed, but it was coming out in the work, in the drawings and the paintings at that time. A lot of anger was there. Well, I've come to terms with that now. Like I mentioned earlier, I was doing psychedelic therapy. That was like taking a sledgehammer to block walls and knocking holes in that seamless, it was locked in a vault in my mind. So that was being released. So I could see all that. When I look at those drawings, I had no idea when I was in the drawings or the paintings even of the 90s, that was there. It was so repressed. And I had an occasion where that cracked the veil, so to speak. And
so now when you look back on that, do you have all I can feel is this enormous amount of compassion right now that I'm holding you in. Do you now have a new perspective that you can hold yourself, your young self, in that compassion of that time? Or do you see more of just like the rage and the attempt at reckoning with that?
I recognize the rage. I understand its source. It was, it's kind of like discovering a computer virus and then you realize the computer's not working because of that.
Right, all the things that got corrupted as a result of
precisely, that. Exactly. And I don't revisit the rage. There's no need to. It's done. And especially doing the therapies, that's cleared out like a bulldozer. All that stuff. I mean, it's still there. I can talk about it. I can point to it. It doesn't. I don't have the visceral feelings anymore. It's detached, letting go, which is key in my life. Letting go. Not holding on. It doesn't help. It's just baggage. Will make you sink. Would make me sink. So.
Yeah. So do you find that if you don't get to be in the studio or in your work in a situation like you just were, where you had to be out of town for 5 weeks, do you find yourself getting anxious that you don't have paper and pen nearby, or? Yeah,
well, I even had paper and pen nearby. I just couldn't feel like I could settle into it. I was staying at my sister's house. Lily, I live a monastic life essentially here. I don't see people a lot, talk on the phone a little bit. And so when I was back with the family, it was 5 weeks of solid, from the time I got up to the time I went to bed, interaction, with my nieces and nephew, my sisters, one brother-in-law that's still with us. I mean, other people. And it's just like, it was a lot. And I couldn't settle. So that was all there. I have to confess, though, I did do a bunch of drawings while I was driving.
Wow.
Yes, and I love it. It's the road drawings. And I did about 75 or 80 drawings. And I had the sketch pad to the right of me, and I could hold the steering wheel with my left hand. And I was just drawing without looking, blind contour, except it wasn't contour. And then I would glance down and keep going, and I just did a slew of drawings. And I've done this for years, actually, but this was
That's the first time I've ever heard of that.
I've
done a fair number of things while driving, but I can't say drawing is one of them. That's wild. Are you listening to music when you're doing this?
Of course.
Is music guiding your hand? I mean,
no.
I as a dancer, and I was talking to Maggie Hanley. Do you know Maggie?
Yeah.
Hanley? So I spoke to her a couple days ago, and since she was a dancer early on, we both acknowledged that when music comes on, being still is about the last thing we know how to do. I mean,
right.
Like whether it's a finger moving or my whole body getting it. So I was wondering if music if your hand dances or whether...
It has and it does, but not necessarily when I was driving. I was more intrigued with the rattle of the van. I was driving my van, and how that affected the pen, on paper. Shadows being cast like bug splats on the windshield, and I would look and just do a little squiggle right there.
Yeah.
And all these random things. I did draw. If I saw an object out the window, I might quickly sketch that at 65, 70 miles an hour. It's not, it's safe. People go, you're crazy, you're dangerous. It's like, no, I just, just driving and...
Well, maybe
drawing.
it'd be more dangerous if you weren't doodling. I mean, because
Right.
God knows you'd have all that stuff going on in your head, and which is more distracting? The hand going, letting
Right.
it, releasing it like a valve,
Yeah.
or like it just getting all piled up in your head.
It helped the miles pass, and it was fun, and it was satisfying. And I have yet to go through and look at the drawings, but I just know I have a lot of them, and I'm excited.
So is it like a notepad where you're like flipping pages
Yeah, I can show it to you later. It's just black ink on white paper. It's, and it's maybe not even considered art, but it would be a sketchbook.
Sure.
Kind of like notation, ideas, forms. I just love flying I love drawing when an airplane takes off and you're rattling down the runway and the pen is bouncing all over the paper. I love that. Trains, the rocking of the train,
Well, that makes perfect sense. I mean, when if you were to look at your work as vibratory, I mean, it's kinetic in a way, but it's also it's vibrational.
Huh.
And so I see a lot of vibration in your work.
That's consciousness. Consciousness is vibration.
Well,
so
there you go.
There you go.
So we just took a little break, and during that little break, Nero got his notebook from the car that we were just talking about, and I opened up the cover, and the first thing I see is this funny name badge with a picture of some guy that says Timothy Nero on it. And I was like, dude, is this you? Yes. So you were back for your 50th reunion?
50th high school reunion.
You did that on top of everything else that you told me about?
Yeah, that was actually the very beginning. So
good Lord.
It was a busy time.
Well, that's a lot of stuff that's going to push buttons. I mean, going back for just any reunion is going to push buttons.
Yeah.
Going back and being with family for however long that was.
That's the biggest push. That's the biggest button, man.
Wow. Well, it doesn't surprise me that you filled an entire notebook of scribbles. I don't want to call them scribbles.
Scribbles work.
But
mark making, yeah.
And they're really, some of those are really, really cool.
Thank you.
I can't believe you were able to do those while you were driving.
Oh,
I mean, they're
really...
abstract, so it's not like, I'm not concerned that your eyes weren't on the road.
Yeah.
Maybe one hand on the wheel, but that's
That's how I drive anyway. So
prolific, really prolific. So, what's it like to go back for was it 50th?
50th high school reunion. Well, didn't have a great time in high school. Didn't know anybody. I saw my first love there, and she had seen on Facebook that I was going and contacted me and said, I'm there too, let's get together and hang out. So that was wonderful, and it was just really sweet. It was the people I didn't know and didn't relate to in high school, I got to talk to, which was, it's like we all grew up, we all changed, we all evolved. It was lovely. And
anybody else in your class turn out to be a prolific artist?
Not in that group, no. There was one guy who was, an artist then, and he's an artist out there in the world somewhere, painting mostly landscapes, but he wasn't there. I don't know why. He's kind of out of touch with everybody, I suppose.
So you were a creative among other, maybe not so creative?
Yeah,
or
business
they expressed
people,
it in different ways?
Yeah, mostly business. People became business people, or I don't know. There was, one guy worked in the Cleveland Plain Dealer for years. He was an art student. We had a great art department in our high school, and a fabulous teacher. And so this one guy, ended up being involved in the newspaper industry somehow. But he makes fine furniture at home, and it's beautiful stuff, incredibly beautiful, just for himself. So I just had a great time. It was great. Yeah, good. I was surprised. I didn't know what to expect, and really I was trying not to think about.
Do you feel like there are people in your class who would understand the work you do? Because what you do is pretty, it's pretty out there.
Yeah, well, it is out there. Some. Yeah, there was. Yeah, actually, I'm forgetting. There was a woman named Holly. She was in art classes, and I think she would really relate to it. We didn't get to, I didn't get to do show and tell with the website or anything like that. But and maybe she'll come and visit with her husband. And then my first love, she would understand. Her name's Kay, and so yeah, it was. it made me feel really fulfilled after being there. I was very glad I went. Maybe it was a closure thing. I don't know. But it was good.
Well, it's also, there's something I find very comforting about sometimes going back and realizing that you're in the safety of your now life, going back. So you're not really going back into anything. You're going, you're visiting your now self with other people's now selves. And so it's not quite as challenging or scary or threatening as it could potentially be.
Exactly.
I mean, I would never want to go back to some of the times of my life, ever. Yeah. And I think it happened when we were off mic, but you said something, you mentioned your psychedelic
the therapeutic
sessions
that
you do here in this space where we are
exactly
right now.
sitting. Therapist is in that chair. I'm sitting on the sofa. 5 or 6, 7 hours of just stream of consciousness, letting it out, feeling emotional.
Wow.
Very powerful stuff. Grateful I did it. Between Advaita and this, I feel like a different person than I was even a couple years ago. And I'm enormously grateful.
That's really cool, Nero.
Yeah, thanks. I asked for a really big dose of its MDMA, and it's like...
Can you say a little bit more about what the experience is like? Because I'm sure a lot of people are curious about that.
Well, it's that's ecstasy, and I've never done that in a
therapeutic context.
Only therapeutic, and never like party ecstasy raves and all that. So I had no reference point, and it's just take the pill, sit down and talk, and begin to talk with the therapist, and suddenly it kicks in about half an hour, 45 minutes, and it's just, I don't know, the gates get opened, and therapist is very supportive, taking notes, very supportive, and...
Are you doodling during that?
No, I couldn't do that. But I get up and walk around and show the therapist photographs, some art, things that are just pop in that seem to be relevant at the moment. Lots of family photos, and things like that.
So it's really interesting that you do it here in the space where you have access to so many thoughts and works and photographs. I mean, everything that would be triggering positively or negatively for you.
Yeah. I'm glad I do it here. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It just
feels safe, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I feel safe with the therapist too. Extraordinarily safe.
That's really cool. And so when you emerge from a session, you've done a couple of them, you've said?
6.
And have you worked immediately after them, and do you see a difference in your work, or same through line? What's different?
I'm different. The work, I can pull and draw the most visceral, angry image today that I was doing out of necessity 30 years ago. I can do it today just as a need to have that form appear in something. When you saw those paintings with the head screaming downstairs, that was as a result of the therapies. I can draw that head now, and it's in me. So it's really in me. So it's just turning to it and having it happen, wherever I want, whenever.
Instead of it running you.
It doesn't control me. Exactly. Yeah. So
you're befriending these parts and still giving them voice, but you don't feel that they are running the show anymore?
They don't take me away. They're just elements, like bricks. A brick is a brick is a brick, and you just use it to build things, but it could also be used throw through a window. That would be the angry, violent pieces, but I can use that brick now to build the painting or the sculpture, or whatever. That doesn't mean I'm numb and don't have thoughts and some feelings, but then I have learned to look at those things and not react. It's more a witnessing.
Yeah, and the other thing we saw downstairs was you're playing with iridescent colors. You were doing that a little bit because the piece I bought from you actually the last time I was here
the triptych
was the triptych that had some interference purples and blues.
Yeah, very limited.
And then you painted the back of it bright yellow, and it sits proud of the wall, and so there's this very unworldly glow that's sort of behind it on the wall.
Yeah.
So it's this really cool contrast between the yellow that's on the wall and the crazy interference blue, purpley stuff.
Right,
But what we saw downstairs
spirals.
looks like it was an even deeper exploration of the
I'm
color.
diving in, and I'm embracing my love of blue. I love blue. I really do. I just notice myself when I see blue, I just turn my head. It's like, what? It just captures look at my shoes. They're blue.
Yeah. Glad I wore blue today.
We're all together in blue. The belt.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. So, I don't know. That's kind of a silly thing. I mean, I like all the colors. Some I resonate more with. And blue, though, it's just as this.
You're in a blue stage.
Yeah, Picasso doesn't have the ownership of blue.
Right.
Yeah, or Klein, right. So I'm just enjoying the hell out of blue, and it's iridescent, so it changes from sometimes a gray, muddy blue to this electric shocking if you move, it'll change the lighting a little bit. And which also, I like the iridescence because it's like multiple paintings in the same surface. They change, so it's, it's like the sky. The sky is one way at dawn and different at sunset and all day long. And so I really like that. You can't quite nail it down. Mm-hmm. I love that.
And last time I was here, I'm just remembering that you had just gotten back from a trip with Magdalena to Italy. And so your paintings were infused, and I see some of that still, those wonderful terracottas and pink, deep pinks. And so you were in, weren't you down in the southern part of...
No, we went to...
Tuscany.
No, we went to Venice.
Oh, okay.
Verona and Trieste. But I'd been there to Italy, to Rome and Florence the year before.
Okay, maybe
First
I'm
time.
conflating the two
Sure.
things.
Wow.
Or for some reason I was feeling like the colors were informed by like Pompeii. There were these really
informed.
fresco, saturated.
Fresco's the word, yes.
Yeah.
Especially Ostia Antica. I saw that's an archaeological site.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's frescoes that you could, they're right there. I mean, an arm's length away. And those colors and that red oxide and
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I see you getting excited about red the same way you were just getting excited about blue. So
colors,
it's really colors.
Look at the computer. It's just vibrant yellow. I just love color. I love black and white. That's the thing. It's like I want to do black and white. I want to do yellow. I'm all over and I allow myself that. I don't restrain. I just figure it all comes out in the wash at the final hour. It'll just has I pull a show together, disparate objects.
Well, we don't eat the same meal every day. We might as well.
Let's hope not.
Well, I think it's great. It seems like you're giving yourself a little bit more play, and that's one of the words you used when we first sat down together. So being playful and certainly play is a different space than the angst that you were talking about.
True. It's I don't want to be artificially restricted. And so, I mean, I could say, okay, I'm going to work within this parameter, and that artists, many do that. And they only work with, like Guston, he worked with red oxide and white. There's a lot of dirty pink, it's very fleshy. I love it. And it's shot through most of his paintings, especially, when he returned back to the figurative. But I don't want... I just say fuck the rules. Hope that's allowed.
Sure.
And I just, allow myself the privilege of going where at that moment I want to go. So that's why, I could sit down and do these spiral forms of these, odd shapes that you're seeing here, plant form things with pink and white, and then suddenly an hour and a half later working in electric blue and a screaming figure. And I do that multiple times in a day or over the weeks, and then suddenly there's 12 paintings this way and 12 paintings that way, and Bob's your uncle. I got a show. It's just how I've always worked, though. I've always had these threads going simultaneously, parallel.
So at the end of the day, after all that self-expression, are you exhausted, or are you just sort of satisfied and full, and then you wake up ready to exhale all over the canvases again, or how does it go for you?
Oh, it's none of that really. I mean, yeah, it just depends, you know. I mean, sometimes I'm exhausted, sometimes I'm exhilarated. You know, the funny thing is I'll be exhilarated after working on a piece, go to, you know, make dinner and do something else, go to bed, get up in the morning, go, oh my God, who did this crap? You know, it's like, how did this pass? You know, and sometimes it might take a few hours and then I come around to it. Sometimes it has to be, you know, I have to dive right in and work on it right then. You know, and it's just, it's like anybody else, I suppose. You know, you have your exhilarating moments and your kind of flat moments, you know?
Well, not everybody is as productive as you are. I can't imagine being this productive and being anything but exhausted, frankly. But at the same time, I mean, I can't imagine having this much going in my head and not having an outlet for it. So you're a different animal than I am, needless to say. But you also have no problem accessing that energy place.
Well, that's the permission I've given myself.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing I said earlier about making powerful forms that cause a response. I mean, that's the hoped for goal. I mean, you can't control that after it's done and out of here. But yeah, I mean, yeah, sometimes I'm bloody exhausted. Sometimes I'm not. Just, you know, every day is different. And so.
So would you say that as you look across that, we're looking at a wall of smalls that are on small shelves sort of propped up against them for the people listening out there who can't see what I'm seeing. And would you say that there's like a volume? When I say volume, I mean like if we were listening to each of those pieces, do some of them for you have a loud volume and some of them have a very soft volume? Or do you hear them? I mean, when you look at them, how do you respond to them?
That's a good way of, excuse me, of asking volume. Yeah, you think of them in those terms, but a vibration or resonance. Some really just grab me in the moment. And, you know, like the top right one, it's a yellowish,
field or background?
Yeah, it's like Naples yellow. I'm trying to be a little more specific. It's basically yellow and black marks, gray. It's kind of smoky looking, and that happened like really fast, you know. And then the larger, you know, more of the Pompeii look, you know, that took a while. That was returning back and back and back, you know. So I think sometimes those that pull more time have a different kind of sound or volume, if you want to speak that way. Like right now, I'm really enjoying the pink ground with the very yellow-green explosion on it. That just satisfies the hell out of me. And it has since I've done it. But then I'm really intrigued by the white ground with the pink and red forms that look like plants or body parts.
Sea anemones or something.
Yeah. So, you know, each one has its own voice, and there's maybe a chorus or many voices that are in harmony, you know. But yeah, as you can look across, I mean, you can see essentially similar forms and very fluid looking, I think.
Yeah. So, what's next?
Glad you asked that question. Well, we were off mic. I was telling you I'm going to build these shelves or paint. It's actually folding down tables, 3 of them across one wall. It'll be about 20 feet of workspace. To move all my small paintings over there, I've got this 4-foot by 8-foot table. I want to get back to sculpture and 3-dimensional work. It's pulling on me in a huge way for a while, a good long while, more than a year. And I haven't, because right now I'm set up so when I paint, I can't sculpt because there's a lot of dust and dirt. And so then I have to put all the paint away, paint everything, and then sculpt. And then it'll still be that, but at least it won't require the same space. I can have a little bit of a separated space, even though it's the same room and it's an open room. But I just feel like I won't have to pick up my toys.
Excellent. So when you were saying that if you stay, you might build some, would that be to build dedicated space for sculpture if you were to
I was
add
thinking
on?
of a 1,000 square foot addition off the painting studio.
And so what does it feel like when you say, the sculpture is really calling to you? I mean, you were gesticulating like it was almost a visceral something coming through.
It is visceral. It's sculpture is much more physical than painting. Painting is, in many ways mental, and it's only small paintings, just finger and wrist movement. Sculpture is full body, and it's pulling on me. I don't care if it's going to be 4 inches tall or 14 feet tall or however. I just feel like this pull to work in three-dimensional right now, and I've got all this material. A lot of it came from my father's workshop, and I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to come, and it doesn't just come like that, but more often than not it doesn't. It evolves and grows. And
so do you have notebooks for your sculpture as well, like you do for
No,
your...
it all comes from the same source.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes, years ago, it's not so much the case now, but years ago when I was living in Taos, I could do a sculpture first, then a drawing, and then a painting of it, in that order. And then sometimes it'd be a drawing and then a sculpture, then a painting. It was never, this and this step and the next step and final steps. It wasn't that way at all. Some sculptures would inform drawings that I hadn't even thought about, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah.
It's another way of looking at things, another avenue in, and so that's another thing I embrace. It's not the traditional way, So I like it, and I'm going to be doing some bronzes. I've got
bronzes.
I got 3. My dad was a wood carver. He carved figures, and he had 3 done in bronze. They're not. I'm going to appropriate. I've appropriated the bronzes. I'm going to melt them down and make my own work. So it'll be like a continuation.
Oh well, wait a minute. To full stop. That is pretty powerful. You're going to take your dad's work. You're going to melt it down, and you're going to make your own work.
Right.
Well, that's pretty powerful. I mean, given what, and backstory without going into any details. I mean, I know a little bit about your relationship with your dad.
Yeah, I was a little concerned.
That's something, I don't know that you would have been able to do that a while ago.
You're right.
I mean, it's your father's death has suddenly freed something in that department, if you don't mind my saying so.
No, that was flat-footed truth. I mean, the passing of my parents, I love them, immensely. I'm grateful to them forever. And they were also a bit of a roadblock. And so their passing, as much as I miss them, and I do daily, it's also been a liberating moment for me.
Well, that's an example of liberation if I ever heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know the relationship you had to your dad's pieces, and there was some struggle there early on that that you shared with me. But I just think it's pretty cool that you're going to do that. Talk about giving yourself permission. And I think it's really, again, important for listeners to hear that, because whether you're an artist or a non-artist, one of the, I think, secret ingredients of being a good artist is permission.
Bingo. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've taken some of his sculpture. He was... He did carvings of, a lot of them were corny caricatures, and it made him happy and kept him occupied, and he was very good. He had great eye-hand coordination. Poor guy was colorblind, so he couldn't paint his own things, but they were more often than not mountain men and Native American figures, and they just didn't have. And they were more often than not, I think, copied from something he saw in a carving magazine. So, it was his joy, and that's good. But for me, those bronzes, I want to do bronze. That's very expensive, and here's an opportunity. And they weren't, in my opinion, that great. Now, a lot of people would probably love them to pieces, but too bad. Here we are.
They're yours to
mine.
do that with, to reincarnate in a new way.
I'm excited to see how
Phoenix rising from the literal ashes.
Exactly. And, in a way, it'll also... I mentioned it to another friend, and he said, it's like collaborating with your father then, unbeknownst to him.
Well,
And so,
maybe Benoist to him.
Who knows?
Right?
Who knows?
Right?
Yeah, not in the physical
Speaking
plane.
of permission, maybe the permission has been granted and, you're just picking up on it.
Gosh, thanks, Dad.
That's pretty odd. Well, wasn't there a sculpture that he did of you that you sort of modified?
Yes. Well, it wasn't of me per se. Again, my father was a very good copyist. He didn't have, I couldn't see anything that was original. When I thought it was original, then I would see something that he copied from. It's like, oh my God. So, yeah, he made this thing, gave it to me 10 or 12, 15 years ago of a little boy and my son Timmy. It's all very endearing, but it was actually, he made it for me, but he made one for my nephew about 5 years earlier, identical. And then because he couldn't paint, because he had a tremor in his hand, which is amazing that he could carve it all, he had me paint for him. And so the one morning I just woke up in a foul mood, this was years ago, and just started modifying it. And that was a liberating moment then. I did feel exhausted after that. It was probably more emotional and mental than the physical.
Yeah, well, I think those things that we try to do to distinguish ourselves or, separate ourselves from our families of origin are rites of passage and, all by themselves.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, however we choose to explore that.
Right.
Differentiation is the word I was looking for.
Yeah, that's the word.
Differentiation. Wow. Well, I asked about what's next, and you started to talk about the sculpture. But I'm also wondering, what's next? What do you see? You're integrating a whole lot of stuff that's happened in the last couple of years since we last
The last
saw
4
each
have been
other.
really intense.
Yeah.
My major professor passed away, and, dear, so important to me, man. He passed away 5 years this November now, and that was a blow. And, other very close people. And so, I don't know, I'm just waiting to see. All I'm going to do is show up, and let the work come out. I don't have
coming through you.
Yeah, I don't have ever a plan when I start something either. It's more like, let's just see what happens. Like the road drawings, I didn't know what's going to come out. Well, that's nice drawings. They're actually more the thread of my own images and forms. I'll show them to you later. But, yeah, it's just, I'm always surprised in that way.
So, knee surgery next, maybe. Hopefully not, but maybe.
No, definitely.
Definitely.
It's definitely, yeah, the surgeon said, leaving it as it is, which is completely unstable. Parts that were put in are undersized. I've been in chronic pain for 2.5 years. He said it'll never get better. It'll just get worse. And since the first time I saw him in May until today, it's worse. I can attest to that. So, yeah, I don't know when that'll be. It'll be September, October, hopefully soon, because I have a lot of things I want to do.
Right. A lot of sculpture on the other side of that.
I want to go traveling and sculpture and all that. Yeah, painting. The whole 9 yards.
Well, I want to come back and see you again after your new knees and sculptures are underway.
You're invited.
Excellent.
Love to have you, as always.
Oh, great. Well, thanks, Nero. This has been really fun, and we'll end it there. So thanks for joining us today. Please like and follow us on ArtStorming.org, where you'll find a list of our shows, a transcript of this episode, with links to the guest page, as well as our other projects. ArtStorming is brought to you and supported by ArtBridge and listeners like you. Look for us on your favorite podcast platforms.